And I was very, very skeptical at this point because I was like, that's just not going to happen. So about 2, 3 months later, she comes back after like going back and forth, and there was like nothing. It just never really got picked up. And then literally 2 days later, after we were like, okay, this is probably like we tried it, didn't work, move on. We get an email from her. She's like, so guys, really good news. CNN wants to pick this up. Um, so CNN does this exclusive article that ended up on the front page for like 3 days. And the crazy part was like, I'm still in high school because I remember waking up that morning. I still have to go to school. I'm sitting in class and I'm getting hit up by reporters from pretty much every other news site asking for interviews. And I'm like asking the poetry teacher, like, yo, can I like go talk to like the news on the phone real quick?
Brennan Agranoff. If you have seen these, if you've seen any socks with your face on them,
or our face on them,
well, you don't have socks with our face on them.
You should though.
You should.
I mean, I wouldn't be mad. It might be weird, but
if you've gotten socks, you know who uses these? Dennis Yu, our great friend Dennis Yu, loves to send you socks with your face on them. And if you are ever wondering, because everybody's like, that's a cool gift.
So cool.
Super cool. But guess who's behind it? Brennan Agranoff from Hoopswag. So we're super fortunate to have him with us today to talk to you live. Hey, Brennan, what's up, buddy?
How's it going?
Fantastic. So now that we've thrown you on the screen, the first thing that everybody's saying is, how old is that dude?
Yeah.
I'm 20 years old. I'll be 21 in a couple months.
So not even old enough to drink legally.
No, not legally, no.
Yeah. It's okay. We've had Connor on here before. We understand.
Yeah. If you've had Connor, then I look really good.
Yeah.
Connor actually, before his 21st birthday, I think, was drinking White Claw during the interview.
With us, yeah.
He managed to start a beer company actually before he was even of legal age. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive.
All right, so you are at 20 years old. You've been doing Hoopswag for the past, that means 7 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
Tell us about how this whole thing gets started.
Yeah, so I grew up in Portland, Oregon. We've got like Nike headquarters out here, so like 10 minutes from my house. I was in middle school, went to school with a bunch of kids that their parents all worked at Nike. And so we'd always end up with like our hands on Nike gear before like kind of the rest of the country got it, just as samples or whatnot. And so they came out with these socks that had blocks on them. They were made for basketball. They're called Nike Elite socks, and they were like $14, which I was a very frugal kid, still am. And I thought this was the most ridiculous thing. But I start going to school and all these kids are wearing them, and they're just like, they only had 4 colors. I think it was like black, white, blue, or red. And so I'm going to school, all these kids are wearing them. And I'm like, wait a minute, like I got to wear something brighter than this. I was the kid that had to top everyone else in terms of like brightness of clothing. And so I was on scrolling through Instagram one day and I see this super colorful pair of socks. I was like, oh my gosh, like I need these. So I save up like $40. And my parents, like I purchased a pair of $40 socks. And my parents thought I was just absolutely nuts at this point. But I get these socks and I'm wearing them to basketball practice and school and whatnot. And all my friends are like, yo, like, where'd you get those from? Can I get some? And I straight up wanted more for myself. First off, that was like really the biggest driving factor, was like, I wanted more for myself and I knew they didn't cost $40. And all my friends were asking about them. And so I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. And I had like sort of done the whole like flipping thing on eBay since I was like 7 and kind of messed around and understood how like you could ship things and very basic understanding, I guess, of like selling things online. And so I started to do a bunch of research. I was like, okay, so I have a white sock. How do I add color to it? And it was about 6 months of research, like online forums, Yahoo Answers. I was working with like print shops. I melted, I don't even know how many pairs of socks, but we did all this sort of testing. And I finally like arrived on this method that is what this company had used to print the socks. Once I had that, I basically found this like local guy who could make samples for me. And that was like the first thing I knew to do. I was like, okay, I need to get some in hand. So I got some samples made that were like half printed, but like would prove the concept. And I took those, flipped them on eBay, made a decent amount of money off of like 10 pairs of them. And I was like, okay, there's something here. And so I was like, I at least could buy the math I was doing in my head was like, I was obsessed with Excel as a kid. And so I have this giant Excel spreadsheet that was like, okay, I need to sell this many pairs of socks to pay back the initial equipment. I can do it over this time frame. And basically it was the closest thing you could call like a business plan. And so I basically present this to my parents at 13. I'm like, hey, I need like $3,000 for this initial loan for this equipment, and here's how I'm going to pay it back. Here's how long it takes, etc. And I had a bit of a track record in terms of like they watched me do this for 5 or 6 years, and definitely like been encouraging of it, or at least supportive. And so I got the $3,000 loan from them, and I think I ended up paying back in like 60 days just selling stuff on eBay. And then I threw up my own site in like August of 2013, and that was like the start of Hoopswag, if you will.
All right. So a lot of people are coming in. I see everybody jumping in. They might have missed. We're talking today with Brennan Agranoff, who is the founder and CEO of Hoopswag. If you've got socks with your face on them from Dennis Yu, they came from Hoopswag. Brennan started out this company 7 years ago when he was 13 years old with $3,000. His parents gave him $3,000 in order to get this thing off the ground. And now, I mean, and look, I know that you don't know the group that well, but this group is we're not shy. We love success. Like we're everybody's going to be so pumped to hear this. But now from $3,000, and then we'll fill in the blanks. So that's how we started. And then now what do you do? Like, so now you must be doing what, $3,000 a month?
Yeah. So, I mean, last year we did about 2.2 million in sales, and hopefully,
Not bad.
It's decent.
And is it just socks?
So yeah, we did mostly, I'd say it's like 90% socks. It was in probably like 2018. 2019, we launched an oven mitt brand, which does very similar thing like faces and dogs on oven mitts. And then the past couple months, we sort of started experimenting with like printing masks now too. So that could be big going into Christmas this year. So we're expanding product lines. Yes.
That's one of the biggest selling things. We're gonna come to that. We're gonna come to that.
Okay, I gotta ask another question too, because the sock doesn't actually like have a brand on it. Is it your sock?
So those are our base socks. We have a version with and without a logo on the side. Does it have a little like H symbol on the side? Yeah. So that stands for Hoopswag. If you look, there's actually an S inside of the H, and it's like a little bit of an optical illusion. But that's kind of the only branding on there. We keep it relatively minimal though. It's more so in like the packaging.
And I got to tell you guys something I love about these socks more than anything, or more than our faces on them, is they have the little right and left reminder. So you never wear the wrong sock on the wrong foot. Well thought out. I'm just saying.
I'm glad that's useful. A lot of people think it means like large, and I'm like, no, that's left. And they're like, oh, like I thought you sent me the wrong size, and I was like, no, it's right and left.
Right and left, buddy. Right and left.
All right. I hope we've got everybody's attention. Brennan Agranoff, 20 years old, last year, $2.2 million in socks and oven mitts. Started out with $3,000 from his parents, and then off he went. So now let's talk about filling in the blanks. So we get the $3,000. We start printing these socks. Tell us about that journey, biggest successes, and also biggest failures. Did you have any setbacks along the way?
Oh, absolutely. All the time. So yeah, I mean, I started selling these things on eBay. That was like the first thing I knew how to do. And I was like, okay, I'm having some success on eBay. Like I'm going to throw up my own website. So I threw up my own website thinking that all my friends love these things. Like I'll sell a bunch. We sold nothing. And I kind of came into the realization, like, again, I had no background in marketing or anything. And I was like, okay, no, there's nothing selling because there's nothing coming. There's no one on my site. And so I was like, okay, I need to find a way to like generate attention around this. And so being 13 and Instagram was sort of picking up, that was like, I just turned to Instagram. I made an Instagram account. I started doing like giveaways and sending product to like these shoe collectors. It was like influencer marketing before it was called influencer marketing pretty much. So I'd send them socks. They'd post them to their followers. I'd make socks that match shoes. And the cool part about our business, and this is still to date, is like everything is one-off essentially. Like we don't keep inventory of anything except for like blank product. So everything's pretty much made to order. And so I had a bunch of flexibility in that sense. So yeah, we started sending these socks out from Instagram, slowly started getting sales. And like looking back, it was a really slow growth process. Like to a 13-year-old, I think we did like $10,000 our first year. Like that was a very like what I considered successful at the point in time. But like looking back, we went from like, I believe it was like 10,000 the first year. We got our own site up. We started selling a bit more on eBay after going through like a full year of that and building a bit of a customer base. And I think like the second year we got to like $50,000 or $60,000. And so it was like 5x, but it was still like looking back, very relatively slow growth to get to like what we hit last year. And so going off of we were printing on just Nike socks at this point. This is like literally run out of my garage. I had, at this point, I think I actually had hired one of my mom's friends to come make socks because I was still a full-time student. And so I'd come home and there wouldn't be time to make socks and get them to the mail in time. So I had this mom that would come to her garage every day and make socks, which was a very little interesting dynamic. But yeah, so I got that going, and it was like, almost removed myself a little bit from it. And then it got to a point where like, okay, we've been printing on Nike socks this whole time. We keep running into like inventory issues. We like Nike won't sell to you directly. You have to go through these third parties. And so we ended up developing like our own brand of sock. Like that was the next sort of move to step away and make this like a legitimate business. And so it took me about 6 months to a year. And there was to like develop our own brand. And inside of there was a whole mess of stuff that was like one of my first big losses, I would say, was like we tried working because like I'm in Oregon. I'm 14 or 15 years old. I don't know how to go talk to like Chinese factories or overseas factories. And so my first bet was like, okay, I'm going to go see if I can get something manufactured domestically, knowing it might be a little bit more expensive, but like to at least understand the process. So we go back and forth with this factory for months, finally get like samples approved and everything. We place like an order of like 5 or 10,000 and we get the socks and they're just completely bad, like not usable. They weren't what the samples were. We'd just been kind of like screwed over. And so I messaged them and I'm like, hey, like what happened? Like these are not what we got at all. Never heard back. And like there was a relatively big chunk of money out of our like total pot, you could say at the time, being 14 or 15. Like it's not like we had all this cash we're sitting on to play with R&D and such. And so that was like a major setback for us. And then I started going to China and I was like, okay, maybe I do have to get this done here, and sort of figured out how to develop things over Skype, and sending samples in the mail. So that was definitely like a big lesson I learned early on. I think was like, okay, this happened and we're either going to like let that sort of really screw you over and step down, or you can kind of just keep going and figure it out as it goes. But so we did that. And then we started moving towards about a year later, we got on Amazon. And that was another, like, I'd say big milestone for us was we jumped. I mean, Amazon is a massive sales channel. Pretty difficult to get on at the time for like certain categories like clothing for whatever reason. But I kind of like schemed my way getting onto Amazon. And that really sort of like grew the company even more. And then the next sort of like big milestone was we actually ended up acquiring one of our competitors in the space, from like they were one of the first competitors. Huge social following, like much more well known than I was. But it was a husband and a wife in California, and they were doing it out of their garage, and like we can't do this anymore. Like, and we were more of like doing the actual production and manufacturing stuff than they were, and so we ended up acquiring them. Which honestly, at the time, it was more so like we wanted their artwork. Like the artwork's what's really valuable in this business because it's what makes people buy them or not buy them. And so we acquired that. But what I didn't know at the time was like we'd always considered doing something with press just because of my age, and I was like, why not take advantage of that? And the opportunity kind of set itself up once we acquired them, and we were like, okay, maybe this is the right time, because there never was really anything that was like, wow, like this is a big milestone, like you need to do anything with this. So we ended up working with, it's a very small world, but like my 8th grade PE teacher, I was like best friends with because we'd sell stuff on eBay. Like he did the same thing that I did, like flipping stuff. And so I always talked to him. Turns out his wife runs like a PR firm locally. And so I didn't even know what PR was at the time, but we started like at least scoping it out and seeing what was possible. And she was talking, I remember on the first call, she's like throwing out all these big organizations. She's like, oh, like we can do an article in Forbes, an entrepreneur, and all these things. And I was very, very skeptical at this point because I was like, that's just not going to happen. So about 2-3 months later, she comes back after like going back and forth, and there was like nothing. It just never really got picked up. And then literally 2 days later, after we were like, okay, this is probably like, we tried it, didn't work, move on. We get an email from her. She's like, so guys, really good news. CNN wants to pick this up. So CNN does this exclusive article that ended up on the front page for like 3 days. And the crazy part was like, I'm still in high school because I remember waking up that morning. I still have to go to school. I'm sitting in class and I'm getting hit up by reporters from pretty much every other news site asking for interviews. And I'm like asking the poetry teacher, like, yo, can I like go talk to like the news on the phone real quick? And so very, very interesting experience. But our business like tripled overnight, just because of all that exposure. And so after that, we kind of took that and ran with it, and we built that, like we had a much larger customer base at that point, and we started building out other programs. So we're doing like fundraising programs, charity programs, all these different sort of things with our existing customer base. And then that kind of propelled us. Like I'm always picking up new ideas too. And so like we turned into more of a manufacturing type company, I was starting to realize, versus like just a sock company. because when I was 13, I was too naive to know that like most companies will split out, like they'll outsource the manufacturing and outsource the fulfillment. I just assumed I did all of that. Like I just was. And so as we're sort of moving towards that, I saw some of these other products popping up, which were like socks with dogs on them. I saw a company that was super successful doing that. I was like, well, wait, I already have the stuff to do this. Why don't I hop in on this? And then the piece of software basically to develop was like, how can you do the customization? Like someone uploads a picture and how do you create the print files and deal with that? And so we took that and ran with that and created these dog socks pretty much. And the system for that.
Socks.
What's that?
Personalized dog socks.
Personalized.
Your
yes. Personalized.
Socks. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can choose like your background and your color or whatnot and your size and you upload your images. And so we did that and that went really well for like the next 6-9 months. Like I said, I'm always looking at new stuff. So I was like, okay, Mother's Day, what's a product we could basically leverage the same software we built for on another product? And we launched oven mitts and those have done really well. And then we did face masks and like now we're looking at like really expanding to like mugs, blankets, towels, kind of your generic like gift items, I guess. But with a twist in the sense that they're all customized. And it's yeah.
Well, so I have a question because I want to go back just a little bit because this is
Yeah.
fascinating. At such a young age, you were able to acquire another company. And that's something that we talk about all the time here in the Black Diamond Club is that you should always be looking for other companies within your industry that may be going under or maybe aren't making a huge profit margin that you can acquire. So like, did you find them or did they find you? How did you go about doing that or finding that?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. So they reached out to us, which I remember getting an email. I was just honored I got the email because and they just CC'd all of us. So there was like 8 competitors on there. And yeah, and the most interesting part though, I will say, was like when we got in negotiations with them, like some of the other competitors that we had were offering them more money. But they ended up selling to us because of the way we like dealt with the way we sort of like functioned our company in terms of a lot of the competitors were doing like illegal artwork and all this stuff because it was a small enough industry, like no one's really going to come after you. But we had just done everything super clean from the start in terms of like all of our stuff was above board. We had done things the right way. And those people, I guess, just like aligned with that more so than any of the other things. And it wasn't even worth the money for them to sell because they wanted to see something happen with it. And so that was like, we ended up closing with them for cheaper than some of these other competitors were offering them, but solely because of the purpose that like they liked who we were and how we functioned. And the fact that we had like done things ethically from day one.
So tell us about this getting into the dogs, Mother's Day, all of the oven mitts. Are you researching what your clients are into, or are you just sort of trying to see, guessing and see what sticks? Like how are you coming up with these ideas?
Yeah, so the dog socks, we were like the 3rd or 4th company into the space. Like that was definitely not an original idea. Like I said, we had the manufacturing, but I watch Facebook all the time. I actually go on Facebook a lot just to look at other people's ads. Like I just like scrolling through and looking at ads and seeing what else is on there. So I'm like constantly looking at that. And then also I found some of my best ideas come just from like my friends from high school. I consider them very like consumer type people. And so I love talking to them about what ads they saw today and what they thought was cute and whatnot. Because it's very interesting because it's very telling of like with enough feedback from that, I can take that and go start doing my own research and be like, okay, is anyone else selling these? How hard would this be to create? Like what's sort of the demand for it and judge that. And now we're at a point where we have a big enough customer base that we can sort of like launch products with no cost and see how they do. And there's no downside to us. Like we send an email and we get a pretty good idea if there's any demand for it or not. And if there's not demand, then it's not really worth pursuing that much further. But if there is, then we start looking at like, okay, how can we do paid social on this? How can we get this out there more? Trying to make good things get bigger and kind of getting rid of bad ideas from the start.
All right, if you're joining us late, we're with Brennan Agranoff from Hoopswag, 20-year-old, started at 13. So he's been in business for 7 years, so he's kind of a veteran in that sense. Maybe not a veteran of life at 20 years old. Doing $2.2 million in revenue over the past year. So he's got a thing or two to teach us. We've got Connor Blakely saying hello, sending you a shout out there, Connor or Brennan. I want to jump to that. I know that when you and I first spoke, you were in Las Vegas. You were about to meet with Dennis Yu. I was able to see via social media that day you went on to meet with some other very influential individuals along the day. How important is relational capital to you, and what role has that played in helping you to build the brand and sell more of your stuff?
Yeah, I think I at a younger age, I don't think I understood it as much, and I think only in the past year, maybe 18 months, I've really started to like appreciate the real value in relationships in that sense. But like for the past 2 or 3 years, I have, for example, like Dennis, I've spent a large amount of time traveling with Dennis and meeting all these people and like just kind of learning subtly from him. And he's obviously like very experienced in the industry, and so that's been super interesting for me to see how someone who's that experienced in the industry manages relationships, how he sort of creates them and how they exist for him. And then taking that and also like Connor, right? Like Connor's same age, met Connor 4 or 5 years ago in sort of the young entrepreneur space. And some of those kids have become like my best friends that a lot of people would like have best friends from high school. Like my best friends I talk to on FaceTime every day. And I've started to realize like as you get into like bigger business, I would say, um, I've realized that the relationships are really more important than the actual business itself, just because those are what are going to get you introductions to key people. Those are people who you're going to, they're people who will help you when you need help and you help them. And it's like the most resourceful way, I guess, of going about it that I found. And like, don't make the same mistakes that your friends did. I'd watch my friends make a lot of dumb mistakes because we're all young and I've made dumb mistakes. And so trying not to copy what they did has been like tremendously helpful. So
Can you, I mean, and you tell me, when we spoke, obviously just you and I, we talked a little bit about where you're going. Socks, oven mitts, masks, you have the capacity to print on demand. And that's pretty unique. That's awesome. You are beginning to explore something that I think is absolutely going to be of massive interest to every single one of our listeners, our viewers. I mean, if you're in the service industry, like that's one of the things like swag, right? And it's Hoopswag. But you don't want to order 5,000 t-shirts and 8,000 pens
and keep them in your office.
And keep them in your office.
Nobody wants that.
You have the ability, at least right now with socks, to print on demand. And that's pretty cool because I don't have to do my face. I could upload my logo. I could upload anything that I wanted to onto the socks, print them on demand, send them to a client. And as we already know, the clients get them and are going to post them on social media. They're extremely grateful. It's a novelty. They love it. It's great exposure for everybody.
Great brand equity for any company doing that.
What else are you exploring? What do you see the future for Hoopswag?
Yeah, this is something I'm super excited about. And I know I talked about this on the phone, but like, how can you take an experience like that, right? And instead of just saying like, send them a note that's like, thank you, or an email, it's thank you. It's like, how can you send them something? In our case, which is socks. And like you mentioned, you don't have to keep inventory of all this stuff. But you said we've been testing this over the past couple months with Dennis does this and then a couple other people do it, but it's like a good way of saying thank you. And so you send them socks and they really aren't like that expensive in the grand scheme of things. But almost every time, regardless of like how influential the person is, you get a post on social and they say thank you. And not only that, but like then you show up in their dresser every morning. And they're thinking of the fact that like where these come from. And it's the fact that they're on demand, right? So you don't keep inventory. I think it's a super cool way, and then kind of combine that with something else. So we're working on also like video cards that you could potentially upload a video onto, like you like record yourself taking a video, upload it, and then it gets sent on a physical card to them along with the socks. So that's something we're looking at. Handwritten notes, just like how can you kind of go above and beyond to sort of one up these relationships, and especially in like a service industry, like a little touch like that could make someone from a one-time client into like a long-term lifetime client. And so it's like the cost to do that is easily worth it. And it's exciting for me because like I've done this with like just some of our manufacturers, we've gotten better prices on this because we sent them socks, which is really ironic because they're the ones making them. But it's just super interesting to see how like it all like the relationships just play out over time. So
awesome.
I love that. Well, let's get granular for a second because I want everybody that's watching to know what do they do if they want to engage you from a business level. So now maybe they want to send socks to their clients. What do they do if they want to get set up as a client and be able to send socks with their clients' faces or their logo to
or
special
their clients'
people?
pets. Imagine that,
home run right
that's
there.
a home run. That's a home run. If you
That
send
is
me
genius.
socks with Dexter on it, home run. Just saying.
Yeah, no.
Set up.
What's that? Oh, yeah. So we're not launched yet. We're like super close to having something live that would theoretically integrate with. And this is something I was going to talk to you about too. But like, how can we integrate with your guys' stuff so you don't have to go off platform and set something brand new up? But hopefully within the next month or so, we'll have something that could essentially it's like a one-click integration, and you can kind of set up like triggers, if you will, saying like, if this happens, then issue them these socks or this gift or whatever. But once we have that, it would be super cool because you'll pretty much have like an automated thank you process, if you will.
All right. So
That's
since you said that, let me just and this is what happens. Like a lot of people jumped on and some people dropped off. And then now
They're gonna watch it.
if you are on, feel free to go ahead and post what I'm about to say. If you heard Brennan correctly, he said that we could potentially set up a system where it was automated and that we could trigger the sending of socks. For example, I don't know of any other EHR in the world that could possibly integrate into Brennan's system other than Katana, where we could automatically send socks to your clients for certain things like their birthday, their anniversary, their 1-year anniversary with you as a client. We could set up and trigger other things. So he can expand now beyond socks, and we could do maybe a branded mug, a Bluetooth speaker, anything that he could print on. This is next
mitts for all the mothers.
Yeah, on Mother's Day. Yes,
mitts for fathers.
I mean, this is absolutely incredible. So now, if you're like, what did he just say? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Because look, first of all, he understands the value of relationships. He understands the value of collaboration. He has a track record of success, right? And now this is something hyper innovative. What if we begin to integrate into the service world where now for him, this is all happening automatedly? Now imagine for you as a BDC member or anybody who's watching, and you have Katana and your EHR is not just an EHR, it's a patient relationship platform. And the patient relationship platform is actually triggering the gifts into Brennan, and Brennan is taking care of the printing, the shipping, the handwritten note if you want it.
You get to
Holy
set
cow.
it and forget it. Like, I love that.
And
like,
every day you
just
look on social media and see everybody posting.
More impact and do less. Like, you get to wake up in the morning and go, I didn't even know it was Mary's birthday today, but she posted about socks. How awesome would that be?
And I think Brennan would be up to like 5 million in revenue once that gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be crazy.
Your revenue.
I love it. What do you think about that? We could do that, right, Brennan?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm
saying they love it.
We're close. And that's what I'm super excited about. It's like, because the thing is, if you try to do it manually, you could, but then you got to get someone to like do it and sit down, and it never ends up happening just because it is a lot of work. But once you like
do it ourselves.
Yeah, we do that.
We
don't print them, but we send gifts.
But we send gifts. Just
even the ordering process, to do that all manually is a lot of work and time. And the coolest part, in my opinion, is like when you start integrating, I don't know the specific laws around this, but you can take information and feed that through that then is like printed. So not only is it their face now, maybe you take some other attribute or information that you have on that patient or whoever it is, and you're able to put that onto the product or the note or whatever it is. And like each time you do something like that, it just gets more and more personalized.
I love that.
Their
like
favorite baseball team.
Their anniversary date for their.
Or you could do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Favorite sports team.
Yeah.
Go Cubs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, this is super awesome.
I love it. I love the entrepreneurial spirit you have, the innovation, the drive. I mean, this is killer. Your market research, your relationships. You're like a complete package of all the things that we teach all of our entrepreneurs here in Black Diamond Club. You're doing it all. I love it.
Thank you. That's awesome.
So, all right, everybody, I want you to go to www.hoopswag.com in the interim. Brennan and his team are building out, and that's another cool thing. Like he's so young and he's got a team of developers, people putting all this together. Once that's ready, Brennan and I are going to jump on the phone. We're going to talk about integrating an API right into Katana. Those of you that have Katana, you're in super luck because we're going to automate the process for you. It's going to be amazing. Hopefully, too, Brennan, we can see you at some of our BDC events. I'd love to get you plugged in with the BDC members personally, have you get to meet them. They're going to love you. They're going to buy you drinks even if you're not 21.
No, I love that.
We'd love to get you out with Dennis Yu, have you guys all hang out. He's phenomenal. And listen, I just want to give you my utmost respect. I so appreciate what you've done. And I will tell you this, and I am not, I know the level of people that you interface with, and I'm not on that level. But I will tell you this, after you and I spoke, I commented very specifically, I think I told Rachel, that one, you went about getting the phone call the absolute right way. We were connected, and then you followed up. And then when we got on the phone, it was just the perfect call. Like, you're not successful by accident. And I think that a lot of people, they wonder, like, well, how do you do that? And I mean, you and I didn't know on what level we would connect or what the possibilities or potentials were. And, you know, you got on the phone, and it was an absolute pleasure to hear about what you're doing. And then to hear about your openness to collaborate. And I think that, you know, for me, that was an absolute joy. Most of the time you get on the phone and somebody's just about like, hey man, can I jump in BDC? And you tell them about my socks. And it's kind of like, well, I mean, I guess we could, but I mean, you super get it. And I am super looking forward to cultivating and creating this relationship long-term. As you know, we value long-term relationships, and I see a lot of potential and promise for what you're doing and what we're doing and how we could blend that together.
Yeah, well, it's funny when you said that when we got on the phone. I mean, I did a little research on who you were, but it was finally nice to like put that together. And the same thing you said, where it's like it just kind of clicked and it was cool. So no, I'm super excited to see where this goes, and hopefully we will be able to build better relationships pretty soon. So
absolutely,
yeah, hopefully we'll be out of our COVID bubbles.
Yep.
And quarantine. Well, all right, we got to let Brennan go because he's in Portland, and riot time starts pretty soon. So he's got to meet up with his buddies. They're going to We're going to go all out, see if they can get it done. Brennan, thanks for joining us. We super appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.